All right, welcome to JNUC Day 2. My name's Jordan, I'll be your host here. We will have time for Q&A at the end, so just hold all questions till the end. I'll come around and with the mic and let you guys ask questions. Without further ado, though, please welcome to the stage Rob and Jenny from Tapestry.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. Nice to see you all in Denver and thank you for coming out. So our session, have your cake and eat it too, maximizing the Jamf platform with your Microsoft licensing. My name is Rob Barlow. I'm the lead end user compute architect at Tapestry. Been there for about 4 or 5 years. I run our MDM environments, all of our engineering and integration for our platforms. And this is Jenny.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny. I've been with Tapestry for almost 11 years, starting out in support and growing into my current position as Map Platform Engineer. Very excited to be here. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to run down some requirements and introductions to the technologies we're going to touch today. As far as implementation requirements go, there's a minimum version of Jamf Pro. You do need Jamf for Mac or Jamf for mobile licensing to enable Jamf Routines. For Power Automate, you're going to need an E3, E5, or F3 licensing for the standard flows. If you do have more advanced licensing, you can use some of the premium flows, and we'll touch on that. But today, we're mostly focused on the free stuff that we've built out. Everything we're going to demo today was built on Mac with just an E5 license. We'll talk through some other workflows where you can get more advanced flows, pure API calls off of that. You're also going to need some sort of Teams or Slack licensing, depending on your geography or region. That's usually included in your Microsoft licensing, but can change. And just one note, there is a Power Automate flow that does run on Windows desktops. We don't really talk about those things. Okay, so you're going to learn how to extend your reach here, mostly using Jamf Routines to trigger Power Automate, again, through some sort of communication platform. We all have those channels that are just ingesting notifications all day long. And again, this is kind of a BYO DEX platform. If you don't have any sort of employee experience, NextThink or anything else, or even if you do, you can layer on like we do. Again, user call to actions, IT notifications, ticketing, service request fulfillment, and interactive prompts with users through, for us, mostly Teams.
Let's look at some key challenges we face when we set up these Jamf Routine and Power Automate. Knowledge on HTML, JSON, and other markup languages. You don't have to be a full-fledged developer, but knowing how to read and tweak HTML and JSON will make your life a lot easier. JSON is everywhere. Adaptive card design knowledge. Adaptive card is awesome for user interaction in Teams. You can build buttons, forms, and input, but all in JSON. If you like structured data, you're in for a treat. Premium connectors and per run flow, they come with added costs. So if you have a flow that needs premium connector, and is triggered by a non-licensed user, it might not run or can incur extra charges. So make sure you share your flow. If you have a flow owned by a user and user leave the company, it's gone. There's no retention if there's no licensed owner. Make sure you share your flows. Nothing worse than disappearing automation. And Jamf Routine currently posts as the user who created the routine. If you want to use share account or service account, the capability is not there yet. So we're hoping Jamf will expand on that functionality in future updates. So Jamf Routine. What is Jamf Routine? Jamf Routine is low-code automation tools provided by Jamf. It helps you, it simplifies and automates common IT workflows. It is designed to respond to device events like changes in smart membership groups and device state. In our environment, we use Jamf Routine to send alerts to user, IT channels when things happen. For example, Load this space on device, new enrollment, compliance state changes. Once configured, it's like magic. It happens automatically without manual intervention. Next is bridge. Jamf Routine is like a bridge between device events and IT action. It is event-driven, scalable, and helps us move from reactive to proactive support. Its capabilities include that it can trigger automated device actions like lock, wipe, restart, and even initiate DDMs. It's like remote control for your fleet. It's automated and policy-driven. It's very helpful with notification and reporting. And Jamf Routine makes automation accessible to more IT support users. It improves response time and consistency. This is a sample of the Jamf Routine that we set up for device storage less than 25 gig. It triggers when a device falls into the smart group, and it sends a message to teams with these variables, and they can then be passed into Power Automate. Thing to keep in mind is these variables are not documented in Jamf Learn yet, so you will have to explore the console to find out more.
Okay, next up is Power Automate and its capabilities. This is Microsoft's kind of version of Jamf Routines. It's a little older. Again, it's included in your E3, E5, or your frontline licensing starting at F3. Power Automate has more robust workflows, so there's a lot of error handlers you can introduce, conditions, not just if-then, but time-gated conditions, approval workflows. So you can really take whatever's triggering Jamf Routines and expand upon it. It has, most of the standard flows are included for any M365 product, so SharePoint, Teams, Outlook, and it integrates natively with them. You can run them from your own account or from service accounts, assuming that service account is licensed as well. Most actions are obfuscated, so the end users don't see who actually ran that when you run something from Power Automate. We'll show that a little later with a do not reply email that we use for IT notifications, sending out emails to users. Power Automate is mostly open source. You can build your own connectors in Power Automate if you want. There is a library of third-party ones similar to kind of Jamf Marketplace. So ServiceNow, Zendesk, a few others have built-in ones. And again, one caution there is if it's considered a premium connector, you do need that premium license for Power Automate. What we're showing again is all based on your already used E5 licensing for us. Okay, so these are two of our sample flows that we've built, one being a more advanced flow. There's quite a few conditions on there. There's an approval flow, there's if-then logic, and there's time-gated logic. Again, you can build this out. They can be as complex as you want based on what steps. Obviously, you don't want to get too crazy with it. We are trying to keep it low code, no code as much as possible. Most of this is written JSON, HTML, but has a GUI front end, so if you don't know it, you can get through it. Editing your flows, if you start running specific errors though, it's good to have that knowledge though. The second flow over there, the intermediate flow, is just very simple. It's what we demoed or will be demoing with a low storage device alert. You need to parse some data. So again, that's where JSON, HTML knowledge comes in, but it's fairly simple. We're listening for an event ID to happen in Teams. Once that happens, it triggers this flow. If not, it just exits. And we'll get into the steps that we built when we show this flow a little later. One other note is any time-gated logic you're going to be using in Power Automate needs to be in UTC, so there's an ISO standard you have to convert it to. Again, that's where you see some of these mini steps here is grabbing an image from SharePoint, changing it to a POSIX, again, converting JSON to plain text or HTML to plain text to look at and do different things, but it gives you a lot more outside of that Jamf Routines framework. But again, mostly triggered off the Jamf Routines framework. So next up is a little add-on feature called adaptive cards. If you're not familiar with adaptive cards, they're JSON structure. They're pretty easy, and there's also designers. We've linked to one here, adaptivecards.io. It's actually a Microsoft URL behind it as they try to make this an open source framework. You can capture input from users, through Teams or Slack with them. Again, anything that supports the adaptive card framework. You can have approval workflows, you can have descriptions, you can have required fields, non-required fields. You can also plug in APIs like a Maps API, say, hey, your device was found here. Again, a lot of advanced workflows there. There's resources, templates, et cetera, at the linked QR code. And again, this is just a simple example of one that you would post into Teams. That's the entire JSON schema right there, and then what it would look like in Teams when somebody adds the approve or reject or the comments. There's triggers in Power Automate that it posts that and then listens for the response based on an approver. Once it's been approved, it ingests that and continues with the flow, or if let's say it was rejected, it can send a rejection email and then cancel the flow and stop it from proceeding. So next we're going to go through a couple of our use cases.
Some use cases are get started emails for a new user, consent-based features for biometrics, compliance status alert to end users, device health alerts, Entra temporary access passes, plus Jamf Connect and platform SSO registration.
Okay, for some of our device management use cases, we have consent-based or restricted features. As a global org, we look at biometrics. We have different privacy policies depending on the country. One of the common themes there was we needed to capture consent, explicit consent from the user. Our privacy team didn't think that the user turning it on was enough. We needed to actually get a form from them saying it. So we've tied that in with routines and Power Automate. Mostly looking, and again, you can build your own connectors. That's the beauty of this kind of being in an open source platform, is it can be an ITSM request. Something that's going to trigger a webhook somewhere or an API call can trigger either of these technologies. So in our case, we built a form that when submitted, it was a Microsoft form, it got ingested, kicked off Power Automate, and moved that user into an Entra group, because we were doing this cross-platform as well with both our Windows endpoints and our Mac endpoints. And once they fell into that Entra group, on next inventory submission, recon or sync, Jamf picked that up, pulled off the config profiles that were blocking biometrics features, and allowed it, and then tied in with that, we can send an email to the user that biometrics are now available for their device based on that smart group membership change, and Jamf picking that up and saying, feel free to enable now, here's best practices, here's how to set it up, et cetera. So again, you can take modular pieces of this, whether you want email automations or not, whether you want the Teams automations, adaptive cards. You could even run this all instead of using Microsoft Forms or ITSM service request. You could build this directly into Teams as well with Power Automate. You could have it listening for a trigger like a biometric opt-in, and Teams can pick that up if it's listening on a certain channel or not, prompt them with an adaptive card, they can fill it out, consent it, and then it gets recorded and logged. And again, open source standards, you can send that log anywhere you want. You can send it to AWS S3, you can send it, you can even email your ITSM platform back, like ServiceNow, if you're dealing with templates. We build on these a lot, and a lot of these are modular that you can plug and play what you need for your organization. So again, here's a little example of somebody opting into biometrics. Craig Federici, doesn't work for Tapestry, but he's opted in. We've told him now that he can access Face ID on his devices, and at any time he can come back and change his consent. Here's another workflow that we've done for permissions to join to Entra. Again, if you're in a Microsoft and Jamf license organization, your security team may want to gate who can register devices, preventing personal devices. This ties heavily into conditional access. When we're setting up devices, we can automate moving people into a group so that way they can register for platform SSO. There's more advanced flow that we've done for this, but we've also done this with temporary access passes, and there's a much larger flow we're going to show a little later. But again, this is a sample workflow of what it would look like for that. So next is going to be showing you how to call to action for some end user, things that maybe you don't want an IT ticket on, but the user needs to do something.
Okay, get started emails. Zero-touch deployment is great, but I think new users still need a little guidance during onboarding. For example, how do you help user enable screen recording in Teams? How do you assist user to go to self-service to install applications? How do you direct user to go to internal resources to access like IT documentation or HR policies? The trick is to send just-in-time welcome email to user, not on their first day when they're overwhelmed with a lot of messages, but on the day when they enroll their device. We use Power Automate to send rich, branded email or Teams messages to user exactly when they need it. This process, I think, enhances communication, in-time communication, actionable and relevant. This is the example email that we sent to user. It is generated automatically from Power Automate. Email is HTML-based, so you can include hyperlinks in it to direct user to intranet, self-service, or set up documents. You can also include content-rich like walkthrough or GIFs. Be careful with embedded images because some email client, they block embedded messages. Make sure you test before you send. So sample workflow will be Jamf routine triggers on new device enrollment, and it notifies alert channels in Teams with relevant user information. Power Automate listens for that event ID, which is the new enrollment, and captures the post. It then sends the just-in-time welcome email to user with rich content.
Okay, there's a couple other use cases here, such as compliance state. Again, working in a zero trust framework, compliance state is everything. If they're not compliant, they can't access company resources. And that can often change as the device goes on. We use smart groups for each criteria for our compliance state, OS updates being one of them. And ever since we've adopted zero trust, our need to nudge users, if you're using Nudge or any other, or Superman or any other third-party tool, has had to go down, and declarative device management also helps keep devices up to date, but sometimes you get stubborn users. They won't restart, they're low on space. Again, that's covered under another alert, but that's why we layer these on. But for example, maybe their EDR stopped running. Jamf picked that up, moved them into a smart group. We can email IT in that case rather than the user in that case. But let's say the user's out of compliance as far as their OS update. Then we generate an email, and Power Automate has that branching logic to it to say, hey, why is this non-compliant? And if it is for OS updates, it sends it to the user with instructions saying, hey, you're out of date, you're gonna lose access to company resources immediately. Please run the OS update. If you're having difficulty with it, reach out to support, those kinds of call to actions that you may need. Or again, any new rollouts, software rollouts, things like that you need to inform. When you can do this on, again, smart group membership based on app installs, things like that. There's a lot of different triggers, and again, one of our heavily used one is smart group membership. So again, this one is Tim Cook. He got his new iPhone Air and it's already out of date because he took it out of the box. So needs to update it to gain access to company resources. We did see a lot of tickets with this, new out of the box. Pre-stage enrollments do help, but occasionally that minimum enforced OS update doesn't always work. You got to tweak it off, turn it on, turn it off. This is a second layer for us to make sure we're not getting a ticket on this. The user knows what they need to do to gain access or regain access in some cases to company resources. So again, here's the kind of blueprint for that. Jamf Routines is triggering on that smart group membership. Notifies our alerts channel and Teams. Again, we're leveraging event IDs. We put that in our Power Automate flow to say this is what this alert is, in the Jamf routine flow when it posts to our Teams channel. It has that event ID, and then Power Automate is listening for those on multiple different flows to see which alert is this, what should I trigger? And now, one of the other things is streamlining IT ops, and again, reduction of tickets, freeing up your time.
Load disk space alert. It is the most common and yet frequently overlooked issue. When Jamf Routine detects low disk space, Power Automate automatically sends a friendly reminder to user. This isn't just helpful for user, it gives IT visibility to look at how often the alert triggers. If it triggers often, then we need to maybe swap out the user's hardware or look for hardware that's with higher specs.
And this is helping with our IT analytics, like Jenny said. If we're seeing this run too often on a single person, we need to right-size their device. We have a lot of design developer personas in our org, and over the year the standards have changed, and maybe they need 1 terabyte, or they just maybe are doing bad practice, and we need to talk to them about putting that in cloud storage rather than local storage. Again, you can mix and match your own adventure here.
So this is a sample email we send user to remind them. This type of alert is low effort but high impact. It reminds user to clean up, it helps IT plan better, and keeps devices running smoothly. So sample workflow will go from Jamf routine triggers on smart group membership change. When the user votes into the smart group, it will trigger the routine. Notify alert channel in Teams with relevant user data, like with information will be like username, machine name, serial, or the amount of space left. Power Automate listens for that event ID and captures the post, and then it sends user an email with best practices.
This is a sample workflow, and we've actually started planning to build on top of this as well for our low disk space users, to where Power Automate is actually going to do the opposite and start to trigger some Jamf routines or Jamf API calls. For example, again, being a Microsoft and Jamf shop, we use OneDrive as our cloud storage. We're looking at making sure our config profiles stop local device syncing if they get low on space, so it doesn't continue to happen until they're back above a threshold. So again, that's kind of where it shows the modularity of it, where you can take pieces and you can certainly copy and paste from one flow to the next for different triggers and kind of logic. So here's one of our more advanced flows that we did, and again, this was still all done under the the standard licensing for Power Automate. And again, there's only one licensed tier for Jamf Routines. We have temporary access passes for our users. We use Jamf Connect and platform single sign-on. We use the secure enclave method, which means our users' passwords aren't synced, but if you've ever used a temporary access pass from Entra, it's a way to sign in on behalf of a user without ever knowing their password. However, it does change your SSO screen. If you're using Jamf Connect, it's going to make you enter the password anyways because it says, hey, this temporary access pass is not what I'm expecting as far as a hash goes. So we've gone around that with a sample workflow here, which essentially, when the service request starts for new hardware, it triggers Team Webhooks adaptive cards. Tech and user get an email that somebody's going to be accessing their account. It moves them in and out of config profiles, so that way we stop trying to force sync with Jamf Connect. The tech has a great solution there while he's white gloving the machine. He or she doesn't have to worry about, do I have the right password? Am I going to get prompted anyways? Is MFA going to come into play? Because the temporary access pass should be set up while they're in those groups. And then at the end, as soon as they're done, it removes all of those permissions. If you're using PIM roles, you can also layer that in. And then sends an email to the user that, hey, their device is ready for pickup from so-and-so at whatever office location they're at. Here's one other bonus use case we thought of actually on the way over, which was failing battery. Jamf Pro does monitor battery status and if it's under warranty or not. Simply, if you have zero-touch deployments with your iOS devices or macOS devices, this is an easy one to integrate and let them know, hey, we've noticed a problem, being proactive about it, come get a new device. And again, you've got all these other open source flows where you can start to trigger either a ticket if you want it in your ITSM, just a Teams notification, or even an email to a group DL for whatever office that user's assigned to. And the beauty of that is, again, Power Automate's aware because it's pulled those identities from Entra already, which Jamf may or may not be aware of. So again, that's how the two of them really meld together. All right, we're in the final stretch here. So I'm going to hand it over to Jenny to explain why we use both.
Why we use both? Combining both Jamf Routine and Power Automate, it will be a smart move for everyone. It's not just about automation, it's about building intelligent, scalable workflow with tools that you already own. They provide better support for formatting, more variables, rich content, and branding in emails. Ability to send from share, do not reply email account, keep things simple and professional. Extends Jamf routine needs to the whole entire M365 ecosystem, and the ability to design adaptive cards for user or IT interaction that guides decision all within Teams and Outlook. You can combine all the tools that you have and build your own digital employee experience without acquiring additional SaaS application. This is how we scale automation without scaling costs. So you already have all the licenses. It's time to unlock the workflows.
So again, everything we presented today was on the free standard Power Automate licensing. There's a lot that's unlocked with Premium too. Again, for this session, we really wanted to cover what you can do with what you're licensed for already. If you're familiar with JSON, if you're familiar with HTML, API calls, there is just an HTTP endpoint in Power Automate. So you can extend that to any system you have that has APIs. Think about your EDRs if you need to lock, quarantine something automatically, Jamf Protect endpoints, ServiceNow endpoints, Zendesk endpoints, whatever tooling you have that can accept an HTTP request, you can trigger it straight from Power Automates based off of a Jamf routine. Again, those are typically the premium connectors. They are available, but this is the blueprint on how you get there. So we're going to start the Q&A, put up a couple resources. Most of these were covered in the QR code already. Really want to thank everybody for coming out today. Jordan, if you want to start Q&A. And again, thank you for everybody. If you're in the New York City area, there's a New York City Jug meetup. If you know Mark Malaccio, he can get you on the wait list because it is full already. It's about 150 people. It is one of the larger jugs around. Feel free to come out and say hi.
Thank you.
So if anyone has any questions, just please raise your hand and I'll find you. There we go.
Quick question. So you're using specifically the Teams webhook because it's not a premium connector instead of HTTP, which is a premium connector to connect to Jamf?
Correct, and there's two ways, or there's more than two. When you go into the Power Automate workflows, you'll see some templates already, but you can search by each kind of software. So you'd search Microsoft Teams, and it's going to show you all of the triggers that are available. The two most common ones are a webhook received, and or listening for certain words, because it can listen for certain words in a Teams channel. So that's why we kind of cheat and use that event ID. So when we post, it's looking for that event ID in a specific channel, and that triggers everything else.
So that was going to be my next question. Where do you store the data between the flows, but you're saying you use keywords in hidden Teams channels as your event IDs instead of storing it on SharePoint or a database?
It stays in the Microsoft Dataverse.
Okay.
So you need to keep your Dataverse alive, which is pretty easy when you're running this many automations. You need activity, I think it's every 90 days to keep it alive. But it's all loggable in there, and you can also send that off to Sentinel if you need to. Let's say you're running something that your InfoSec partners want to be aware of. Again, there's anything in the M365 ecosystem there, short of spinning up like Azure Compute, is covered. So you can add to a SharePoint list. You can actually create a new file in SharePoint and automatically add it. For example, some of our Access Pass logs just go into, I hate to say it, an Excel spreadsheet that we audit every once in a while, but nobody else has right other than Power Automate on it. So if we ever need a backup, we have the Dataverse logs. We have the Power Automate logs, which I think are retained for 30 days, but then we have at this point, really long spreadsheet that we can go in, and that's more for us to just go audit. Like we look for, who requested it, who's it for, what incident number, what was it, and again, a lot of this is collected, and our actual form that they have to fill out is pretty easy, which is, what's the UPN of the user, what's the incident, what are we doing, are we refreshing the hardware, break fix, new hardware setup, that's all our tech has to fill out. Power Automate will go pull that requester and requestees profiles from Entra and give us all the rest of that data in Power Automate. So then we can do everything else. That's how we pull the emails, everything else, and know who to send to, what region to send the webhook to, or the approval adaptive card to.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very clever.
We've got a question over here.
Were there any scenarios which you couldn't do with Power Automate and Jamf, which you,
We haven't really run into one yet. I'm sure they exist, and that's just a question of premium licensing too. One gap that we had that kind of started us on this journey was alerting ServiceNow. So Jamf Routines does not have a direct ServiceNow integration as of yet. I know it's a heavily requested feature, so upvote that if you get into Jamf Routines. There's a little box there for them to build out new integrations. So we were using this to trigger teams, capture that information, and the ServiceNow connector is actually premium. We're getting around that for free by instead we allow and have templates in ServiceNow for incoming emails. So we're formatting our email to automatically open that ticket for them or that service request for them by doing that instead of actually using ServiceNow's, don't tell them I said that, but using their premium connector.
okay, cool, thanks.
Anyone else at all?
Nope. No more Buellers.
All right, well, thanks for coming in, everyone. Just give it up for Rob and Jenny one more time.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.